Imagine for a moment two colossal economic giants, Europe and China, standing face to face at a pivotal crossroads. For months, diplomats from both sides have spoken of a so-called reset, promising renewed cooperation, ambitious trade agreements, and an end to mounting friction. The headlines have been full of promises and optimism. Yet, as the latest series of high-stakes summits kicks off, it becomes clear that reality is far more knotted, and the stakes are higher than at any moment in recent memory. If you have been led to believe that the European Union and China are on the verge of a great reconciliation, it is time to look beneath the surface. Behind the carefully staged photo opportunities, the firm handshakes, and the diplomatic platitudes, a deep and stubborn mistrust continues to fester. The much-celebrated idea of a grand rapprochement, once touted as a near certainty, is slipping further away with every passing negotiation and every new policy announcement. Let's take a step back to understand how we arrived at this moment. The relationship between the European Union and China is a complex tapestry, woven from threads of promise and threads of rivalry. In the early years of the 21st century, hope was the dominant emotion. China's accession to the World Trade Organization in the year 2001 sent waves of optimism through European boardrooms and factories. European exports to China soared. European manufacturers benefited from access to a vast and rapidly growing consumer market, and Chinese-made goods filled European shelves at prices that delighted consumers. But it did not take long for cracks to appear in this seemingly perfect partnership. By the mid-2000s, concerns about human rights abuses in China became impossible for European politicians to ignore. At the same time, European companies began to complain about limited access to the Chinese market, intellectual property theft, and what they described as unfair trade practices. European steelmakers, for example, found themselves undercut by subsidized Chinese imports, while technology firms warned of forced technology transfers and restricted investment opportunities. Then, in the aftermath of the global financial crisis of 2008, both sides found themselves in desperate need of new growth engines. Trade between the European Union and China surged to unprecedented heights, but so did political disagreements and mutual suspicions. European leaders faced an uncomfortable balancing act: how to reap the economic benefits of engagement with China while protecting strategic industries and upholding democratic values. This tension crystallized in the protracted, some say doomed, negotiations over the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. Intended as a symbol of deepening ties, the agreement has instead become a cautionary tale of just how hard it is to bridge the fundamental differences that divide Brussels and Beijing. Today, the relationship has become a delicate high-wire act. On one side, Chinese investment into Europe has exploded. In the past year alone, Chinese foreign direct investment in the European Union and the United Kingdom soared by nearly half, reaching a combined value of approximately 10 billion euros. Chinese investors have targeted everything from green energy projects in Spain to automotive innovation centers in Germany. On the other side, Europe's trade deficit with China has ballooned to well over 300 billion United States dollars, a figure that stirs anxiety in economic ministries across the continent. Faced with this growing imbalance, European leaders have begun to tighten the screws. New customs surveillance regimes have been rolled out, designed to track Chinese goods with unprecedented scrutiny. Just this past June, Brussels activated a comprehensive system to monitor imports, responding to fears that American tariffs on Chinese products could send a tidal wave of redirected exports flooding into European markets. In parallel, the European Commission has announced new restrictions on Chinese medical device manufacturers, citing persistent concerns about market access and what officials call a level playing field. But these surface-level efforts at cooperation and regulation cannot disguise the deepening distrust. On the Chinese side, authorities have launched investigations into what they allege is dumping of European pork products, affecting more than 1.75 billion euros worth of exports. At the same time, Europe is ramping up legal restrictions on Chinese technology firms, with a particular focus on telecommunications giants like Huawei and ZTE. Yet fewer than half of European Union member states have enacted formal bans on high-risk vendors, leaving significant vulnerabilities in the continent's digital infrastructure. This patchwork approach has sparked intense debate within the European Union about whether the bloc is truly prepared to defend its technological sovereignty. Meanwhile, the signals coming from European capitals are anything but unified. Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, has repeatedly called for a negotiated resolution to trade disruptions, emphasizing the need to avoid escalation. In stark contrast, Sabine Weyand, the European Union's top trade official, recently admitted that negotiations over electric vehicles have reached an impasse. Automotive industry leaders like Mercedes-Benz CEO Ola Källenius advocate for increased collaboration and warn that tit-for-tat measures could harm European competitiveness. Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, takes a much tougher line, insisting that Germany, and Europe more broadly, must reduce dependencies and fortify critical infrastructure against strategic vulnerabilities. Even Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, who has often spoken of a positive and mutually beneficial relationship, now emphasizes that deeper engagement must come with robust safeguards and clear-eyed risk assessments. If the growing rift between the European Union and China continues unchecked, the consequences could be felt far beyond the borders of Brussels and Beijing. Several plausible scenarios now hang in the balance, each with profound implications for businesses, workers, and consumers worldwide. Some experts warn that escalating trade disputes could trigger a cascade of new tariffs and restrictions, fracturing supply chains that have taken decades to build. Picture European automakers suddenly cut off from critical Chinese components, or Chinese technology giants losing access to millions of European customers. Such disruptions could jeopardize hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs, while sending shockwaves through industries as diverse as pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and renewable energy. At the same time, the geopolitical chessboard is shifting beneath our feet. The United States, under its own assertive trade agenda, is pressuring both allies and rivals to pick sides. Europe, historically committed to an independent course, now faces mounting pressure to realign its economic strategies either toward Washington or to carve out a truly autonomous path. Chinese leaders, meanwhile, are grappling with their own domestic economic headwinds, including a slowing property market, rising youth unemployment, and the lingering effects of the pandemic. In response, Beijing could opt to tighten its grip on strategic sectors, restrict exports of critical raw materials like rare earth minerals, or redirect trade flows toward emerging markets in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The risk, according to many analysts, is a world economy splintered into rival blocs, each seeking autonomy and leverage at the expense of global integration. As one European Union trade official put it recently, adversity is forcing us to rethink our strengths and weaknesses, and that may be our best chance at long-term security. This sentiment is echoed in boardrooms and government ministries across the continent as leaders grapple with the trade-offs between efficiency, resilience, and sovereignty. So, what does all this mean for you, watching from the outside? First, it is a wake-up call about the hidden threads that connect the products we use every day to the complex web of global policy decisions. That smartphone in your pocket, the electric car you might be considering, even the coffee beans in your morning cup, each of these is part of a supply chain that is shaped by the evolving relationship between Europe and China. As consumers, investors, or professionals, understanding these dynamics can help you make smarter choices, whether that means diversifying your portfolio, seeking out more resilient suppliers, or simply staying informed about shifts that could impact your career or wallet. On a broader level, the lesson is clear. Economic power is inherently fluid, and alliances in today's world are shaped by a mix of cooperation and competition. The messy and often contradictory relationship between Brussels and Beijing is emblematic of the 21st century global order, interconnected, yet rife with risks and rivalries. Experts remain divided about the future, but there is a measure of cautious optimism that negotiation, rather than outright confrontation, can still carry the day. Ursula von der Leyen has insisted that there is still space for a negotiated solution, but she also warns that Europe must remain vigilant and ready to defend its own interests, even as it seeks common ground. So, what might the future hold? Let's consider a few possible pathways. First, there is the scenario of escalation. If trade disputes continue to spiral, both sides could unleash new waves of tariffs and restrictions. This would almost certainly fracture existing supply chains, disrupt the flow of goods and capital, and create uncertainty for businesses large and small. European car makers could face punitive Chinese countermeasures, while Chinese technology companies might lose significant access to the lucrative European market. Such tit-for-tat moves could trigger a broader decoupling, not unlike what was seen between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War era, a period marked by technological isolation, resource hoarding, and mutual suspicion. Alternatively, the two sides might find a way to muddle through, engaging in a form of selective cooperation. Under this scenario, Europe and China would continue to work together in areas of mutual benefit, such as climate change, public health, and scientific research, while competing fiercely in other domains like digital infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, and raw materials. This would require careful management of tensions, robust dialogue, and, above all, a willingness to compromise when national interests collide. A third possibility is the emergence of new alliances and trading blocs. As the United States, China, and the European Union each seek to strengthen their own strategic autonomy, countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America could become the new battlegrounds for influence and investment. Already, China's Belt and Road Initiative is reshaping trade corridors from Central Asia to the Mediterranean, while the European Union is deepening its partnerships with countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Brazil. The contest for global leadership is shifting, and with it, the very rules that govern international commerce. It is worth noting that, even as the rhetoric around decoupling grows louder, the economic reality tells a more nuanced story. Last year, trade between the European Union and China reached record highs, defying predictions of a sharp break. Behind closed doors, officials on both sides acknowledge a simple truth. Europe and China need each other more than they often admit in public. European automakers depend on the Chinese market for a significant portion of their sales, while Chinese manufacturers rely on advanced European components and technology to stay competitive. For ordinary Europeans and Chinese citizens, these shifts can have tangible impacts. Jobs may be created or lost as companies adjust their strategies. Prices for everyday goods may rise or fall depending on the outcome of trade negotiations. Even the availability of certain products, from antibiotics to electric vehicles, can hinge on the twists and turns of this complex relationship. In this sense, the fate of the European Union-China relationship is not just a matter for diplomats and CEOs. It touches the lives of millions across both continents. So, what practical steps can individuals and businesses take in this new era of uncertainty? For investors, diversification is key. Spreading risk across different sectors and geographies can help cushion the impact of sudden shocks. Businesses should consider building more flexible supply chains, with contingency plans for geopolitical disruptions. Consumers can stay informed about the origins of the products they buy, supporting companies that prioritize transparency and resilience. For policymakers, the challenge is to strike a balance between openness and security. Too much reliance on a single partner, whether for energy, technology, or raw materials, can leave economies vulnerable to external shocks. At the same time, excessive protectionism can stifle innovation and drive up costs. The key lies in targeted measures that address genuine risks without undermining the benefits of global trade. History offers some important lessons. In the 1970s and 80s, Japan was seen as the primary economic rival to the West, sparking debates about market access, technology transfer, and strategic competition. Yet, over time, dialogue and negotiation helped to diffuse tensions and lay the groundwork for deeper cooperation. Today, many hope that Europe and China can find a similar path, avoiding the pitfalls of confrontation while building a more balanced and resilient partnership. But make no mistake, the road ahead will be anything but smooth. The issues at stake, from digital sovereignty to climate action, from intellectual property rights to labor standards, are complex and deeply contested. Both sides will need to show flexibility, creativity, and above all, a willingness to engage in honest dialogue. And here's a little-known fact. Despite all the talk of decoupling and divergence, trade between the European Union and China has never been higher. Last year, both sides exchanged goods and services at levels that shattered previous records. This suggests that, for all the political theater, the economic ties binding Europe and China are proving remarkably resilient. So, what do you think? Are we headed for an era of confrontation or compromise? Will the European Union and China find a way to repair their relationship? Or are we witnessing the dawn of a new era of economic rivalry? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more insights into how global economics and technology are shaping our world.